It's December. You know what that means. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, it's time for our yearly review of the Les Paul Artisan. Why do we do this? Well, it seems every December I buy one of these, and because when I think Les Paul Artisan fancy banjo inlay guitar, I think of Dave Davies in the Father Christmas music video rocking one of these things out in a glamorous, fashionable way. Let's go ahead and kick off with our history. When was the Les Paul Artisan introduced? The first official model year is 1976. Now, do shipping ledgers show two of them shipping in 75? Yes. How do you know you have the earliest Artisan ever produced? They start with C serial numbers, C followed by 6 digits, and we documented one in this episode. But then they start into the decal serial years, so you can find one that says limited edition at the top with the serial number. And then you can also find them actually saying Les Paul Artisan at the top. And then in mid-1977, we get the introduction of the now standard serial number system. These fancy models were produced all the way until the year 1982. However, after 1979, production numbers drop off significantly. It's much harder to find an 80, 81, or 82 Artisan rather than a 70s version. Spec-wise, they're very similar to a Les Paul Custom in the fact that we have an ebony fretboard, but instead of block inlays, we have the hearts and flower banjo inlays, as well as a matching headstock cap and Artisan truss rod cover. They did a pretty good job making it look right on a Les Paul, in my opinion. But that's why I keep one of these things in my collection. They also gave him the fancy TP6 tailpiece that was relatively new as a Rendell Wall creation. And fun fact, it was the first model to feature the Gibson flip-out winding tuners. You could find that as soon as 1978. It's also at that time when the default changed. So from introduction till about 1979, 3 pickups was the standard. You would have the Series 7 in the neck and bridge, and then a super humbucking in the middle. However, after 1979, 2 pickup became the standard. Can you find 2 pickup in the 3 pickup era and vice versa? Yes, but those are usually custom orders. These were offered in 3 main finishes, as you can see here on this official marketing pamphlet. Those colors being black, sunburst, and walnut. However, there's some asterisk there, because the walnut comes in like 3 different hues. There's one that's so dark you can hardly even tell it's walnut, then there's one that's a little bit lighter, and then there's the ones like we're documenting today that have that nice smoky walnut color. I love those. And with the aging of the finishes, they all just tend to look different nowadays. There were also limited edition runs, like for example in 1982 there were a run of approximately 10 white ones done up with black binding. I'm still looking for one. I came close this year, my friends. The person that I bought the first Super Custom from says his brother owns one, but they haven't talked in about a decade. So maybe next year will finally be the year we can document one of those. But don't forget about my freaky blue Artisan. If you ever doubted the authenticity of that one, Randy Leonard actually found an old photo of it at the Gibson factory. So that was a wonderful discovery this year. Thank you so much, Randy. It's great to have definitive proof besides just my findings on it. And who knows what else time might dig up. But these things continue to get more and more expensive. What are your other alternatives if you can't afford the typical 4 to 8K asking prices, depending on originality? You might seek out one of the Lee Malia Epiphones. He had history with this model, so when Epiphone reached out to him wanting to do a signature, he said, let's do this. And then those were popular enough that they said, let's do an RD and let's do an Explorer on top of it. There was a time when those things were like blown out as cheap as $600. Now they're a little bit more expensive than that, but hey, they had Gibson USA electronics and they were kind of unique. But there were also knockoffs made back in the 70s and 80s. For example, you might check out this Greco that was made that looked fantastic. Or say you're not a Les Paul guy at all. You might check out the 2018 SG Flying Eagle. It utilized the Flying Eagle banjo style inlays, so it's not exactly hearts and flowers, but it's got a very similar vibe and is also great if you're a Jerry Garcia fan. But for the time being, let's go ahead and redocument this beautiful 2 pickup Artisan that I purchased back from a viewer of the show when I was trying to get my Brazilian Rosewood Les Paul Custom back. 2 hours of cleaning and polishing later, this one has never looked better than it has today. So let's start with our pickups. Being a 2 pickup version, we do not have the super humbucker in the middle, it's just the Series 7 tarbacks. So that's the same thing you would find on like a 25 50th anniversary Les Paul, except you don't have the coil split lead. Here's a quick peek at the bridge pickup. 16k ohms in the bridge and 16 in the neck, which is correct for those. However, the super humbucker in this middle position, if you could single it out on those guitars, would read about 8. But in these guitars, it's those together, so you get about half, which is 8. But on the 3 pickup Artisans, it actually ends up reading 4 in the middle position, because they get that kind of out of phase, almost Stratocaster-like single coil tone out of the center. Now, if you're saying, hey, Trogly, mine only reads about 8 in the regular positions, that's probably because you have a dead coil in one of the pickups. Unfortunately, it's very common for these epoxy-coated humbuckers of this era to go bad, and there's really no good way to fix them. There are very few pickup guys even willing to take on the task. The gold on the pickups is looking pretty good. That's another thing about these. If you like really clean looking ones, you can't replace the covers on these either due to the epoxy coating. I say that with an asterisk. You can, it's just very, very difficult and probably won't look right when you're done. Here's a good look at our neck pickup cavity. You can see it's a short neck tenon. And there we can see our mahogany body with the maple top with a small maple layer in between. That's a remnant of the pancake body era, which we've been documenting to see when that stops, and so far it seems to be about 1983-ish. But as far as this middle layer right here, usually gone by about 76-ish, although you can find it all the way till about 79. And here's our bridge pickup cavity. Just more of the same, but it does show you. This is not a walnut top. It's not like a Les Paul. This is simply a color over top of the maple. And we can see it's a 3-piece maple top, which most Artisans are. However, that 82 we documented last year was a rare exception to that rule. As far as our bridge, it's just a regular one of the era, Schaller made in Germany, Nashville style, with the posts in the body. However, we get the TP6 tailpiece, which basically just has these fine tuners on there. You can use them to fine tune the guitar, but it's not like a violin where the main tuners aren't as good and you need fine tuners. The original box for these just says fine tuning while you're playing. So like if you strum a chord and you're like, the G string's a little bit off, you can use your picking hand to quickly adjust that, since your usual tuning hand will be tied up doing whatever chord you're doing. But it is important to note that the studs that they used are very similar to the Sustain Sisters. So the Sustain Sisters were these large brass inserts. Usually when you talk about those, you're talking about the bridge. I'm not sure if these had the same name, but I believe they're doing a similar thing. But if you look around here, there's actually a little rubber gasket, and the studs are a little bit larger. The problem is this rubber gasket reacts to the nitro. So now that I've pointed it out, if you look, you can actually tell that the clear coat has ambered over in these areas. That's very apparent on natural 2550s. Thankfully, being a beautiful dark finish with some natural yellows in it anyways, it's not all that apparent. As far as a detailed condition overview, you can see it's got nicks and dings. This one was definitely played. Might look like a shiny collector's piece at this point, but it's far from that. And that's why I sold this originally the first time, because I was like, yeah, I love the color, but the condition just isn't really there. And when I bought it back, I initially just thought, probably for resale again. I just want my Brazilian custom. But I think this is one of those ones, I'm gonna hold on to it until I find another one that looks similar to this. I just love the color so much, and I don't have to be scared to let somebody play this one, I guess. And even though I have some really crazy Artisans in my collection, this one has always kind of had a soft spot in my heart due to the way the color looks. But the big question is, did it leave this color or has it faded? A good way to check that is around the pickup rings, and here you can see the original hue. So it was a slightly darker walnut at one point in time, and it got sunned. Now that I'm thinking about it critically, it almost looks like maybe there were shades or blinds that made these areas protected, and then the sun just bleached certain spots. I've never really noticed that before, but sometimes the fading actually just adds to the character of the piece. And sometimes it's just wood grain, like yes, this is the pickguard area, but you don't see your usual shadow necessarily. It's just this piece of maple was a little bit lighter than that one. The headstock is similar with the fading. You can actually see through the dye in certain areas, but when you remove the truss rod cover, you can tell it did start all really black and uniform. The guitar just seen some sun. Here's a quick look at that pickguard. It's definitely a little scratched up from regular play. Now moving on from our solid mahogany body, 3-piece maple top, we've got the 3-piece maple neck with the ebony fretboard, and thankfully all the inlays are intact, and we have super ultra shiny frets on a vintage guitar again. Probably better than they were brand new. It's funny because I've probably cleaned this guitar twice now. First time was back when I was using steel wool before I really knew how to give it this shine. And don't worry, I've heard your guys' requests. You want me to reshoot my how I clean a guitar video. I'm gonna do that for you because I think everybody deserves to know how to make their guitars look so good. I'm gonna warn you, it takes about 2 hours, but the results are worth it. Got that 12-inch fretboard radius paired with a 24 3/4 inch scale. As far as detailed neck specs, we get 1.68 inches at the nut, 2.06 at the 12th, 0.81 first fret neck depth, and it says 1 at the 12th, but probably more accurate to take it at the 10th where it's 0.94. Here's that profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. These are C-shaped necks. They start off a little slim, but when you get towards the heel, they do chunk up a little bit. We already talked about the fading on the headstock, but we can take a second to appreciate our cool pre-war Gibson logo style and all of our other fancy vine inlays. I've always loved the look of the headstock on these, but for other people, they're just too fancy, which I can understand too. Here's a thing if you're interested in buying an Artisan, double check your necks. Make sure your truss rod's not maxed out. This one's looking good. And then you need to sight it for neck twists. We're not talking relief in the neck that your truss rod can fix. We're talking where the neck actually goes or and you can't fix it. For whatever reason, it is extremely common for neck twists on Artisans. I don't know what they were doing with these. Oh, and by the way, I said this was the first model to feature them, but they didn't have them very long. More research needs to be done on that topic, but you can find some in 1978. After that, they used the cranks on some late 70s 335 style guitars, but you really don't see them widespread till about 81. Here's a look at our Artisan truss rod cover. What's cool about these is they're actually engraved. So you've went through the black layer into the white layer. So as those age, so does the writing. Moving on to the back, might look pretty clean, but when you put the light that blinds on it, yeah, you can see it's quite chewed up with buckle worming. Pretty much across the entire thing. It was played and enjoyed. But thankfully, I didn't notice any areas that broke the finish. You do get kinda close in these areas though. You got some nice wood grain on the back when you can see through to it. So now let's talk about the electronics. This era still had the shielding tin over top of it. This is our neck pickup. That looks touched up to me, and I'm on the fence about that pickup. However, I'm pretty confident somebody's had this bridge pickup in and out, because there's just too much solder everywhere else. So whoever did the swap in and out did a great job. So can I guarantee this is the original pickups to this exact guitar? No, but I can say that they are the era correct ones. Then if we look at our pot codes, our tones date to the 20-something week of 1978. This one matches that. And then we have the second week of 1979 over here for our volumes. Typically that's how it goes in this era. These two match, these two match. You'll also see that the factory did not quite get the backplate lined up properly, so the wood chipped out. Looks like somebody's put some putty in there just to help the screw stick. We have our golden output jack plate, and now we need to have a little bit of a story time. When I first bought this guitar, back in like 2017 or whenever it was, when it was shipped, this got dropped in transit and the strap button actually sank into the guitar. So the next owner had his luthier plug that in, and that is what it looks like now. If you didn't know the history, you'd probably just think, oh, the finish chipped a little bit there because the strap button's resting against it. Also, when that got damaged, the switch tip was broke into at least 2 pieces, and I glued it back together, and it seems to still be working okay for the time being. But with it back installed, it's only barely visible, and nobody ever looks at this end of the guitar anyway. But if you do, you can see some mild stand rash down here as well. And of course, we've got some mild nicks and dings along the edges as well. Right there in the cutaway horn, and somebody's jean rivets, and a couple of dings there. Some strap scratches at the top, and some more dings along this edge as well. Especially right there. Now we move on to the neck. We do have kind of a nasty gouge right there that you can see in the light. Otherwise, this one's actually held up pretty good. I don't feel any clear coat wear, but if there is some, the black light test will show us. Got our nice giant honkin' volute here, and the Gibson branded Schaller M6 tuners. And then we've got another story to talk about. So when I first bought this, I thought it was one of those C serial number Artisans, but really the factory was just sleeping that day. Because made in USA, you can see that clear as day. It's Kalamazoo made. You can make out the 058, then a 0, then you get like 2 other digits you can just barely see, and then this one right here looked like a C, so it would follow the C followed by 6 digits format. But if you use a flashlight and get the angle just right, you can barely make out the leading 8. Then it's 085, 0058. Which makes it Kalamazoo produced production number 58 for that day on the 85th day of 1980. So there we go. We do have a 1980 Artisan. I'd love to have one for every year that they were produced, as well as every single color, because the Artisans, they're just cool. Condition-wise, we do have a little ding over here, and some mild edge wear. We'll do a quick blacklight test. You can see our plastics are looking good, but you can see a few of those light nicks and dings that we were talking about that went a little bit deeper. Knobs are correct. Everything looks fine on the face. And our headstock's looking good. And this is a great way to tell if any of the buckle worming actually breaks through the finish. And I would say no, I don't see any major areas anyway. Maybe a little bit of a stand nitro burn right there, which I guess would make sense considering how we saw a little bit on the bottom. Little ding there. As far as the neck, there are a few other impressions that I did not see to point out. Small finish worn area there. And the one we talked about earlier. Our volute is looking good. Typical giant late Kalamazoo era volute. And then our serial number area. But as per usual, these guys are heavy. 10 pounds, 6.9 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. The 2 pickup, you don't get all the crazy tones. It's just basically a regular Les Paul Custom. Not a big fan of this neck pickup. It's kind of muddy sounding even after I lowered it. Find it works best with like finger picking styles. But if you really hammer away at it, it doesn't quite get the clarity you want. At least on the lower registers. It's got a good punk rock chord sound to it, which is kind of ironic for as fancy boy as this guitar is. And there we go, my friends. The yearly Artisan review is complete. Hopefully 2024 is the year of the white Artisan, but I guess we'll just keep hunting and see what other unique one might show up. I'm really glad I decided to give this one the cleanup job because I always thought this one looked good, but now it's like, oh yeah, even with all the wear and tear, it's just such a great example in how it's aged. The 2-pickup Artisan is really refreshing. It's just a completely different take on it because if you've always hated that middle pickup kind of being in your way and you just want a fancy boy guitar to bring out on special occasions, yeah, find yourself a 2-pickup Les Paul Artisan, even if it's not what you normally think when you think of this model. All right, Troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy your day with your family. We'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.